The basement door that opens by itself. There are some houses that feel wrong. You step inside and the air is heavy, the silence unnatural. You can't explain it, but your gut tells you something isn't right. That was the feeling I got the first time I walked into our new home. It was an old colonial-style house, built in the early 1900s, nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town. My wife Rachel and I had just bought it, hoping to escape the noise and chaos of city life. The house was beautiful. High ceilings, wooden floors, a grand staircase that creaked with history. But from the moment we stepped inside, I knew something was off. The real estate agent never mentioned anything about the basement. She walked us through every part of the house, talking about the renovations, the new plumbing, the updated electrical system, but she never opened the basement door. I only noticed it after we moved in, tucked away at the end of the hallway, past the kitchen. It was an old wooden door, heavy and solid, with a tarnished brass knob that felt icy to the touch. The first time it happened, I brushed it off as my imagination. It was late at night. Rachel had gone to bed early, exhausted from unpacking. I was in the living room, half asleep on the couch, when I heard it. The slow, deliberate creak of a door opening. I sat up, heart pounding. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked toward the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. The basement door was open. Not just unlocked, but wide open, yawning into the blackness below. I felt a cold draft slither up from the darkness, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something foul. I swallowed hard. Maybe Rachel had gone down earlier and forgotten to close it? But as I reached for the light switch, a deep sense of unease settled over me. I hesitated for a moment before shaking it off. I grabbed the knob and pulled the door shut, locking it with the old key that hung beside it. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The next night, it happened again. Rachel was asleep beside me when I woke to the same creaking sound. My skin prickled. I climbed out of bed, careful not to wake her, and crept downstairs. The basement door was wide open. This time, I knew for certain that I had locked it. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, peering down into the darkness. The air was freezing, and I could hear something, a faint rustling, like movement far below. My breath hitched. Every instinct screamed at me to shut the door and walk away. But I couldn't. I took a deep breath and flicked on the basement light. Nothing. The wooden stairs led down to the concrete floor, walls lined with old shelves filled with dusty boxes. Everything was still. Too still. I swallowed hard, stepping onto the first stair. A deep chill sank into my bones as I descended, one step at a time. The air was thick, suffocating, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. As I reached the bottom, the light flickered. Then I saw them, footprints. They trailed across the dusty floor, bare, human-like prints. But they weren't mine, and they certainly weren't Rachel's. I turned, every hair on my body standing on end. The basement door slammed shut. A gust of air hit me as the light above flickered again. My heart pounded against my ribs. I sprinted up the stairs, shoving the door open and nearly falling into the kitchen. I slammed it shut, locking it once again. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, my mind racing. Something was wrong with this house. Something was down there. The following day, I tried to rationalize what had happened. Maybe the house was settling. Maybe there was a draft. But deep down, I knew better. That evening, I placed a heavy chair in front of the basement door. If it opened again, I would hear it. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke to the slow, agonizing creak of the door. I shot up in bed, my breath shallow. The chair, I had pushed it in front of the door. I crept downstairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. And there it was, the chair had been moved. The basement door stood ajar. A sliver of darkness peered out at me, like a hungry mouth waiting to swallow me whole. And then I heard it. A whisper. My name. I didn't wait to hear it again. I slammed the door shut, locking it, and grabbed Rachel. "We're leaving," I told her. She didn't ask why. She saw the look on my face, the sheer terror in my eyes. We packed our bags and left before sunrise. We never went back. I don't know who or what was in that basement, but someone bought the house a few months later. I saw the listing disappear online. I wonder if the new owners ever noticed the footprints in the dust. I wonder if the basement door still opens by itself. And I wonder if, late at night, they hear the whispers coming from below. mirror that shows another reality. It started as a simple antique, a beautiful, ornate mirror with a gilded frame, the kind you might expect to find in a Victorian mansion. When Lucy spotted it at an estate sale, she was drawn to its elegance, its craftsmanship. The old woman selling it hesitated before handing it over, her wrinkled hands clutching the frame a moment longer than necessary. "Be careful with this one," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't always show what you expect." Lucy laughed nervously, assuming it was just an attempt to make the sale more intriguing. She had always loved antiques, and this mirror would be the perfect addition to her new apartment. She paid, thanked the woman, and loaded it into her car, completely unaware of what she had just invited into her life. The first glimpse that evening, Lucy hung the mirror in her bedroom, directly across from her bed. The frame was even more exquisite in the dim light, its gold leaf catching the glow of her bedside lamp. She admired herself for a moment, smoothing down her blouse before turning in for the night. The first sign that something was wrong came the next morning. Lucy woke up groggily and turned to look in the mirror. But instead of her sleepy, tousled reflection, she saw herself standing there, wide awake, dressed in the same pajamas, hair just as messy, but staring directly at her. A chill ran down her spine. She rubbed her eyes and blinked hard. The reflection now matched her movements, yawning and stretching like normal. Maybe she had imagined it, just a trick of her sleepy mind. She ignored the unease settling in her stomach and went about her day. The unsettling changes days passed, but the feeling of wrongness never faded. Every time she looked into the mirror, something felt off. At first, it was subtle. The reflection sometimes lagged, only by a fraction of a second, but enough for her to notice. Other times, she swore she caught her reflection smiling when she wasn't. Then things got worse. One night, while brushing her teeth, she glanced up and saw something impossible. Her reflection's eyes were completely black, empty voids staring back at her. She stumbled backward, knocking over her toothbrush holder. When she looked again, her reflection was normal. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she backed out of the bathroom, shutting off the light. She tried to convince herself it was stress, exhaustion, maybe even an overactive imagination. But deep down, she knew better. The mirror was wrong. The other side, Lucy stopped looking into the mirror directly. She covered it with a sheet at night and avoided it in the mornings. But the feeling of being watched never left her. Something was lurking just beyond the glass, waiting. Then, one night, the whispers started. She woke to the faint sound of murmuring, like voices speaking just outside her window. But they weren't coming from outside. They were coming from the mirror. Heart pounding, she reached for her phone, turning on the flashlight. The sheet covering the mirror had slipped to the floor, and in the dim glow of her phone, she saw something that made her stomach drop. Her reflection was still asleep, but Lucy was awake. She bolted upright, scrambling to turn on the lamp. The reflection jerked awake at the same time, but there was a delay, a fraction of a second where it had remained motionless while she moved. Lucy gasped, covering her mouth with her hands, and then her reflection smiled. Trapped. The next few days were a blur of fear. She avoided her bedroom as much as possible, sleeping on the couch with all the lights on. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. One night, exhausted and desperate, she decided to get rid of the mirror. She grabbed a hammer and swung at the glass with all her strength. The moment it shattered, a bone-chilling scream erupted from within. But it wasn't just one voice. Hundreds of them, wailing, screeching as if the mirror had been holding them prisoner. Lucy stumbled back, heart hammering in her chest. The shards lay in a chaotic mess at her feet. She felt a wave of relief until she looked down. Among the broken pieces, her own reflection stared back at her. But it wasn't moving with her anymore. It was trapped. The whispering voice in my ear at 3 a.m. I never used to believe in ghosts. I always thought the stories people told were just exaggerations, figments of an overactive imagination. But after what happened to me, I don't just believe, I fear. It started 3 months ago. I had just moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in an older part of town. It was nothing fancy, just a place to call my own. The rent was cheap, the neighbors kept to themselves, and everything seemed fine, at least during the day. At night, things changed. The first time it happened, I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. The room was silent, the air thick and still. I don't know why I woke up. Maybe it was a bad dream, maybe my body just decided it was time. But as I lay there staring at the dark ceiling, I heard it. A whisper. Soft, unintelligible, and very close. Too close. My breath caught in my throat. My first instinct was that I had left my phone playing something, but as I reached for it on the nightstand, I realized the screen was dark. The whispering continued, a faint, hissing sound, like someone was speaking just inches from my ear. I shot up in bed, heart pounding. I looked around the room. Nothing. No one. My apartment was small. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. The closet door was closed. The front door was locked. I even checked the bathroom. Nothing. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was just the wind outside. I told myself this over and over, trying to rationalize it. But deep down, I knew better. The next night, it happened again. 3 a.m. Whispering. This time, it was clearer. Words just barely distinguishable, yet still impossible to fully understand. My skin crawled as I strained to make sense of them, but as soon as I focused, they would fade into meaningless murmurs. I barely slept after that. I started staying up later, keeping the TV on for background noise, anything to drown out the whispers. But no matter how late I stayed awake, no matter how much noise filled the room, when 3 a.m. struck, the whispering would return. It was always in my ear, as though someone were right next to me, their cold breath brushing against my skin. One night, I decided to record it. I set up my phone on my nightstand, hit record, and forced myself to sleep. When I woke up at 3 a.m., I heard it again. The whispering, close, insistent. I wanted to scream, but I stayed still, squeezing my eyes shut until it faded away. The next morning, I played back the recording. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then, faintly, I heard it. The whispering. It was louder on the recording than it had been to my ears. I turned the volume all the way up, listening intently. And then I heard my name. It was unmistakable, a raspy voice, barely above a breath, whispering my name over and over. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. I dropped my phone. My hands were shaking. My breath came in short gasps. Someone or something had been in my room, whispering my name, and I had no idea who or what it was. I didn't sleep at all that night. Desperate, I started researching paranormal occurrences. The more I read, the more terrified I became. The 3 a.m. whispering, it wasn't just a coincidence. Many people believe that 3 a.m., the so-called devil's hour, is when the barrier between the living and the dead is weakest. Entities, spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them, are said to be most active at that time. Was my apartment haunted? Had I unknowingly invited something in? The next night, I made a decision. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't hide. I had to face it. I set up my phone again, but this time, I kept my eyes open. When 3 a.m. arrived, I braced myself. The whispering started immediately. This time I didn't freeze. I sat up and turned on the light. The whispering stopped. I scanned the room, my heart hammering. Still nothing, but then my closet door creaked open. I held my breath, watching as it slowly swung outward, revealing nothing but darkness inside. A chill ran down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Silence. Then, just as I was about to move, a shadow darted across the inside of the closet. I bolted. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and ran out of my apartment, not stopping until I was outside, panting under the cold night air. I never went back. The next day, I broke my lease. I didn't care about the penalties, the money, none of it mattered. I packed up my things in broad daylight with a friend by my side, never once stepping back into that apartment alone. I moved in with a friend until I could find a new place. I never heard the whispering again. But sometimes in the middle of the night, when everything is quiet, I swear I can still feel it. The breath against my ear,